America conceals a lot more than it displays. Below the monuments' exteriors and deep on highways are stories hidden, not ignored, simply forgotten. Not myths, but records of missing children, of dead, drowned towns within, of objects rapping at your door, putting on a kid's face. These aren't stories to amuse. They are cautions, hints, and echoes. And after you hear them, you begin to notice the map's fissures, the areas where reason fails. Secure your doors. Put on your headphones. Take that snug as a blanket. By following this video, you will never traverse America in the same manner once more. Let's get started. The children of Sutter, who disappeared on Christmas Eve. The house owned by the Sutter family caught fire in the dead of night. In a few hours, it was destroyed by fire. 5 out of 10 of the Sutter children, Betty, Jenny, Lee, Martha, Maurice, gone, ages 5 to 14. No one ever saw again. Nothing's left, no evidence of escape, but no proof of occurrences within the ruins. The official reason was defective wiring and fire death, although that night didn't make sense at all. Jenny and George Sutter, as well as 4 of their kids, managed to escape. They attempted to remove the remainder, but everything that was conceivable went wrong. The phone line was disconnected, not melted, but sliced. George's constant reference to the ladder, there was no house. His 2 trucks, both running the previous day, declined to begin. He was unable to go to the upper windows. He was unable to reach his children. At 12:30, Jenny was awake. An incorrect number. The voice of a woman. Laughter. Glasses that are clinking. Then there was quiet. Shortly following that, she heard a huge bang on the roof. A rolling noise. Next came the fire. It started. According to investigators, the fire was enough heat to burn all 5 kids entirely. But Jenny put that theory to the test herself. She repeatedly charred bones in her own hearth. Nothing ever went entirely missing. She had no doubts either. Afterwards, a driver claimed to have seen persons hurling what seemed to like balls of fire at home. One was discovered in the yard several months later, round, hollow, akin to a fire starter. They had warned George. He had expressed boldly and loudly opposed Mussolini. A man told him his story long before the fire. The house would burn down, and his kids would be demolished. A member of the jury on the same man's coroner's inquest, following the fire, according to witnesses, had seen kids in automobiles at motels with strangers. One woman claimed to have seen them observing the fire from a distance in an automobile. Between George and Jenny, in the 1960s, got a picture of a young man that looked like Louis. There was a mysterious note on the back. No return address without an origin. They displayed a billboard. They employed private investigators. They persisted, but they never received responses. The official explanation remained unchanged. By accident, no suspected electrical fire. However, recently, the wiring was updated, effectively, as well as the foreman who approved it and verified everything had successfully completed the inspection. The soldiers wasn't convinced. Never, ever, then. Additionally, it gets harder the more you look. To believe, too. The ladder that was absent was discovered later in a ditch distant from the home. Days later, the trucks were operational once more without any repairs following the fire. No ash, bones, no teeth, and no remnants and quiet. For many years, the case remained open in anyone's thoughts who read about it, as it was stolen from that residence. However, it wasn't only the kids. It was the reality, and it never returned. The disappearance of the Bennington Triangle without a trace from 1945 until 1950, 5 individuals disappeared. No evidence, no bodies, just absent. It took place in the forest, the area around Glastonbury Mountain. Residents call it a curse. Hunters stay away from it. The wind might change suddenly. Compasses spin. Dogs won't get into some regions. It is known as the Bennington Triangle, and it's illogical. The initial disappearance occurred in November 12, 1945. At 7 to 4, Mitty Rivers is a competent hunter, more familiar with the terrain more than everybody else. He was in charge of a team. He passed through Bickford Hollow, continued walking, and was never seen again. Just his rifle. There was a cleaning cloth. That's all. On December 1st, 1946, a year later, Paula Weldon, an 18-year-old Bennington University student. Her roommate was informed that she was taking a stroll. She took her time on the trail. She was spotted by hikers moving toward the forests. They saw her go around a bend. She never emerged from the experience. The FBI became involved. Dogs, airplanes, every mile was searched by volunteers. No blood, no clothes, and no indications of a struggle. On December 1st, 3 years later, 1949, veteran James Tedford, age 68. He was sore getting on a bus in St. Albans by travelers at the final halt prior to Bennington. As the bus pulled up, he was gone. He still had his bags on his seat. Tedford wasn't, but so was his ticket. In between, nobody went on or off. October 12th of 1950. Paul Jepson, age 8. Pigs were being fed by his mother. Paul remained within the truck. After she came back, he was gone. His smell was followed by dogs to the base of Mount Glastonbury. Then nothing, as if he had disappeared into thin air. 2 weeks later, October 28th, Frida Lang Anger, 53, slipped in a creek while trekking with her cousin, informed him that she will return to camp to get changed. She never succeeded. 7 months later, her body was eventually discovered in an open region that has previously been looked through. No reason for death could be ascertained. 5 missing persons, 1 body found. No responses, although there were trends. 2 of the victims wore crimson. 2 vanished on the same day, 3 years apart. They all disappeared October to December. Everybody 3 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Everybody in the same area close to the mountain. The American Indian tribes stay away from the peak. They claimed that it was cursed. They claimed that it ate up humans. Legend has it that the 4 winds quarrel over it. A stone was mentioned by some. Anyone who steps on it is swallowed. They didn't visit that place. Nobody did until it was too late. Some accused wild creatures. Serial killer, according to others. However, there was never a lead or a trail. Never suspected. Additionally, in one instance, the man vanished from a bus in motion. No predator there. That's something. Otherwise, the locals started referring to it as a vortex, a place through which individuals slipped. It was magnetic fields, according to some. Others said a non-human, older thing. To this day, hikers disappear close to Glastonbury. Some are not found, but most are. The mountain is difficult to regain. The Bennington Triangle is not indicated on a map, but inquire around. Everyone is aware of what it signifies. People enter. Occasionally, they don't return. The Ohio Melonheads. What's concealed in the Kirtland Woods? A peaceful town encircled by thick forests and meandering back roads. However, for decades, something has been talked about by locals. Otherwise, something residing in the forest, distorted, quiet, observing. An audio expert who examined the waveform stated that it appeared to be the beginning of a voice, but it was stretched and inverted, down rather than up. The Paiute Shoshone tribe's local elders describe a region close to the mountains where the ground whispers, but only if you can hear your own breath clearly. They stay away from it, not because of ghosts, but due to what is referred to be the empty warmth. In the words of one elder, warmth that does not originate from the sun is a warning. In 2017, a FOIA request disclosed the presence of a classified the BLM report from 1989. Thermal zones that have no known cause. Black Rock subheading. The length of the document was 84 pages. There were just 6 released. The remainder were omitted. This was on the last page, which was inadvertently left unmarked. Take note. Encourage more limitations on exploratory permits. Zone shows up heat exchange is active but geologically silent. Unknown depth, unknown source. 2 parties initialed the line. One from Nellis Air Force Base and another from the Department of Energy. No more records were kept of the entries. However, what cares if a structure is erected right over something that is alive beneath Gerlach? The origin? Because engineers started working just west of there, concealed at a military airstrip that was always in operation. Hearing something else. Not silence, not heat, but voices. Not just any voices. Before the building was ever constructed, voices were recorded. The recordings from Tonopah. Voices below the runway. Nevada's Tonopah Test Range. Because of what they test and what they hear, some Aries are kept hidden. At the Tonopah Test Range is an installation on the edge of the Nevada desert, where dust doesn't move unless instructed to. Infamous for its radar tests, clandestine drones, and stealth aircraft, and cloaked in Cold War secrecy. However, there's a tale. It was never included in the reports. A tale of sound and voices that came from below rather than above the concrete. Tonopah has a huge runway. Moreover, 12,000 feet of strength and meant to support top-secret aircraft and absorb seismic vibrations. The composite was laid down in the 1970s. However, geological surveys of the area were conducted prior to the expansion, and an oddity emerged. Precisely a hollow layer 22 meters below the surface, over half a mile long. Engineers were informed that it was a natural fault or lava tube. Drilling was authorized. Before the recording started, Runway poured the rest of the story. 2006 saw a contractor carrying out. He reported hearing what he described as muted speech while performing maintenance on the subterranean cabling beneath Hangar 4. Even though it was a weekend and the facility was closed, he put a parabolic antenna there, thinking it was radio leakage or EMF feedback. Microphone under one of the grates for access. It was a faint, distorted, but rhythmic sound that sounded like someone talking. At a great distance through a malfunctioning speaker, the waveform displayed when isolated. Patterns of human speech. Although the words are incomprehensible, they follow English directives and cadence. He gave in. The tape to his manager. He kept thinking about the file, even though it was labeled equipment interference. In the year 2010, a thermal microphones had to be installed beneath the runway's far north section for the system's integrity test. In the East Wing, during a 72-hour period, 3 inexplicable oddities were caught. Unintelligible muttering from a woman, a countdown beginning at 10 and pausing at 6, followed by the most unsettling repetition of a male voice using what sounded like pilot's terminology. Upon reviewing the recording, the timestamp revealed that it was January 12, 1968. Issue: the file was kept under a log number that didn't correspond to the microphone's activation until April 2010. Exist: it was there for a moment and then it was gone. Later on in the week, everyone had access to the duty-only server was used to store the thermal grid logs. The technicians were informed that it was an improvement to cybersecurity, but this was stated by an audio specialist. There was no echo there. Although it was a memory, not one of us owned it. According to long-term contractors' rumors, current maps do not show the sealed maintenance corridors beneath the Tonopah runway. Elderly, they are listed as subsidence stabilizers in the blueprints. However, there are no internal images. There is one entry hatch. In 2012, the abandoned fuel depot beneath it was demolished. When questioned about the reason, the base gave a brief reply: instability of the structure. However, base employees refused to. There were ever reports of fissures. What was said? Unusual audio feedback in the communications lower channel that sounds like human respiration, even when there is no power. In 2018, a group of declassified defense audio research data mentioned an unsuccessful echo inversion experiment that was carried out close to Tonopah in the early 1980s. Investigating whether ground vibrations could preserve memory patterns was the aim. Simply put, if concrete and air pockets might serve as an early form of a hard drive. It was decided that the results were not conclusive. However, a last sentence appears in the margin, handwritten. The recordings were not made by us. We located them. No agency accepted accountability. No, there are other echo inversion recordings. A former controller of an airfield, currently in his 70s, in 2020, in a private interview. According to him, one evening in 1992, when internal communications failed, the pilot had to make an emergency landing. However, as soon as the aircraft landed, the cockpit of voice could be heard over the crackling radio. Not from bops, not from the tower, but from the actual runway. Test, he said, describing it as remote, clipped, and resembling a recording buried in static. Flight finished. Return sequence 90. No images. Verified detonation. No explosions that evening. No sequence 90 in the manifest. No test flights. The recording was removed, though the memory was not buried, but the report was. And if voices may be trapped by concrete, what happens if time starts to repeat itself? Because the town is only 180 miles south, the train was abandoned and hasn't operated since 1939. However, at precisely 3:14 a.m., individuals some claim to have seen the whistle, and others claim to still hear it. The train never left the time loop at Rhyolite, Nevada's Rhyolite ghost town. Towns can die, Rhyolite continued to say. After traveling west of Batty, Nevada, the desert finally gives way to a valley filled with broken rock and timber. Until you stay into midnight, when the wind ceases and the sound becomes audible, it appears to be just another ghost town. Rhyolite was established. A train whistle, one without rails, starts. During the brief gold rush in 1904. In just 5 years, it transformed from a tent. The Las Vegas and Tonopah Railroad constructed a spur that connected the camp to a bustling boom town, complete with banks, a school, and even an opera theater. Lined straight into town to deliver miners and transport away ore. But by 1911, by 1920, Rhyolite was deserted, the rails were ripped up, and the gold had dried up. Trains halted, but then continued on. A postal inspector paused to relax while traversing the remnants of Rhyolite. He was writing in his log at 3:14 a.m. when he heard a train whistle close to the old depot. They are referred to as melonheads. Not a joke, a warning, not a nickname. Individuals characterize them as being the size of children, naked skin, slender limbs, and enormous enlarged heads. Others claim it's a birth flaw. It's worse, according to others. The most unsettling version goes all the way back to a man called Crow or Dr. Crow. Records differ. According to the narrative, he wasn't only a physician. He was a sadist, someone who adopted orphans, kids with hydrocephalus. However, rather than caring for them, he tried, poured fluid, and pushed the boundaries of what their skulls could take till one day, a human body, that broke. His house was set on fire. He disappeared into the forest and was never seen again in any formal document. But that's not the end. People continue to report observing them close to the ancient bridge on Wisner Road. Locals refer to the bridge as Crybaby Bridge. It goes beyond sightings. It's noises, breathing heavily, twigs breaking, grunts that don't correspond with any animal. Some claim to have witnessed one running next to their vehicle, matching velocity. Others say they've seen them in couples, silently observing from tree lines. Still, there's a lengthy history in the area of missing animals, pets, livestock, and in certain versions, even kids. It is claimed that the melonheads detest individuals to stay away from them when they can. But when they fail to do so, it becomes aggressive. They are more than simply a local legend. The narrative is based on snippets of the truth. Dr. Etienne Pascal Crow in real life had resided nearby, owned a little cabin. It was destroyed by fire. Kids did go to the property. That is recorded. The legend is not supported by it, although it also doesn't refute it. That's where, because the woods are out, the fear increases. They are genuine. There is a road, the bridge. The missing persons are more difficult to follow. The more you go into the jungle, the more silent it becomes. Not a cell signal, only trees, no lights, and the sensation of being observed. Each town has a tale such as this. However, not all tales include sightings that haven't been halted more than half a century ago. They claim that you may still hear them in the middle of the night, breathing exactly as you move through the brush behind you. Once you're in the vicinity of Kirtland, as you travel after dark on Wisner Road, don't stop. Lock your doors. And no matter what you do, stay in the vehicle. Children with black eyes when panic strikes your door, typically beginning with a knock in the middle of the night. Perhaps you at home. It may be raining, and I'm alone. You unlock the door, and they are there. Two children, not standing there, crying, not afraid. They request to enter. Occasionally, it's for a ride, occasionally using the telephone. They talk calmly and courteously. They seem to have practiced their words, yet something doesn't feel right. It has a light complexion. The clothing is off, clean, and not just off, clean. Next, you observe the eyes. No pupils or whites, simply solid like ink, but black. At that point, the terror hits. a severe physical panic. Difficult to describe, more difficult to overlook. Individuals report feeling queasy, disoriented, and experiencing sudden headaches. Dogs cry, growl, and go crazy, then conceal. It is irrelevant if they are kids. That instinct, that gut sense, you should flee, it's instinctive. There's not a record of their origin. However, the first authentic report appeared online in 1996. Brian Beth is a Texas journalist. He talked about two children that came up to his asking for a ride in a car late at night. Calm, saying the same things over and over in the same. He nearly opened the door for them. Next, he was stopped by something. Additionally, when he glanced again, they had vanished. Given that reports have since exploded, each tale adheres to the same pattern. A quiet voice, kind manner, a strong desire to be invited inside. They never coerce it. They simply wait for hours at a time. When things worsen, when people let them in. Pets, nosebleeds, and power outages disappear. Some homeowners become ill. Skin cancer, radiation toxicity, ocular hemorrhage. A couple said both became afflicted with odd ailments within weeks. They added that the children seemed straight into their security cameras, then vanished. No one is aware of what they are. Demons, vampires, spirits, aliens, it makes no difference. They don't behave like kids. Their speech differs from theirs. Either. Furthermore, there is nothing about them that feels living. There is one constant law throughout each account. They are unable to enter unless you say yes. However, after you do, you cannot retract it. There is still fear once they depart. It persists and intensifies. A few people go away, while others quit sleeping. Some vanish entirely. You are able to write off the stories as scary from the internet. Pasta, an over-the-top meme. However, then you experience it. A rap on your door. Two silent figures. There are no whites in their eyes. And you recall each and every tale, each caution. Avoid opening the door. Don't talk. Keep them out. The exit vampire. When a community drank the deceased. 1892 winter. One by one, a family is dying. One, and no one knows why. They call it consuming. A gradual demise, skin pale, red coughing, and slender bodies to nothing. Mary was lost by the Brown family, the mom. Next, the eldest, Mary Olive, daughter. Mercy, 19, was then interred in the chili. The son, Edwin, came next, hardly breathing. The town went into a panic. Additionally, numerous fatalities. One family, one illness, no responses. However, the fear discovered one. They said that it wasn't illness, but rather a vampire. The Browns were feeding the remainder. George was persuaded by them. The father, Brown, to let it open the tombs to locate the origin. On March 17th, 3 bodies were discovered. Mary broken down. Olive, Mary, bones, and dust. Mercy, however, was still unique, undamaged, pink skin, and a blood-filled heart. Even though it was winter, they didn't care. That the body was stored above ground in the chili. That it was perfectly logical from a medical standpoint to them. It was evidence that she was still alive. She was eating. Thus, they sliced her open. They took out her heart, set it ablaze on a rock, combined it with water, pulverized it to ash, and offered Edwin a drink. They dubbed it a remedy. He passed away 2 months later. Silence returned to the town. Although there was never a vampire, the terror did. The Middle Ages weren't like this. This was just 130 years ago, in the United States, a long time ago. People claim that it was simply superstition, a period of desperation, a misconception about illness. However, Mercy Brown's name is on her grave that is still standing, engraved on stone. Additionally, somewhere below in such a peaceful place, a family's sorrow was transformed into horror by the same individuals intended to assist them. The submerged city, Lake Lanny. Underneath the surface it appears to be merely a lake, busy, well-liked, and safe, although it's not at all. People drown every year. Boats, swimmers crash and disappear. And nobody is able to describe the reason. It is said to be cursed. And there's a cause. due to the fact that this lake was constructed atop a genuine town, Oscarville. And that town remained calmly. Oscarville was a person of color, communal, thriving, and independent before the lynchings began. Gangs, threats, and flames. By 1912, the populace was expelled. Years later, however, the land was captured once more, this time by the government. Eminent domain. The justification was a source of water. They did not destroy the town. They filled it with water. Houses, churches, structures, and even cemeteries, just submerged, but still there. As soon as Lake Lanny filled in the 1950s, it ingested Oscarville entirely. Sidewalks, roads, whole foundations remain at the bottom, quiet, undamaged. And ever since, more than just water has been removed from this lake. It feels odd down there, according to divers. It's dark and cold, as if something is waiting. Rescue crews had difficulty. Structures are caught, anchors. The bodies become stuck. Occasionally they never get better. Locals murmur concerning ghosts. The ghosts of the dead, the displaced, the mistreated. A few let say the lake remembers. They reveal tales of swimmers being pulled under by arms, of murky water with shadows moving in it, of quick yells, then silence. However, there isn't a story more loud than the figures. Numerous people drown each year, even proficient swimmers even in daytime. Too many for chance. Authorities point the finger at booze. Crowds are awful. Choices. However, the figures are honest. History doesn't either. Oscarville wasn't deleted. It was laid to rest. Additionally, some let's pretend it wants to leave. Thus, when you go to Lake Lanny, be careful. The water appears serene, but it's waiting below.